Yes, 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 people. Echo Chamber is back as we do. And today I am joined by Tom Carroll to talk about his brand new joint, The Stress is Killing Me. Tom, thank you for joining. Appreciate the time, my friend.
Great to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Tom, and now I was a little confused with the IMDb because it says there was another film, Who Stole the Tasmanian Devils. Now, is that out?
That's a short film that was
That's a
done 5 or 6 years ago.
okay. So, The Stress is Killing Me is your actual feature
That's
debut.
the that's the film that just came out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So, how do you feel about that transition from short to feature?
Well, everybody's got to, sort of cut their teeth on short films.
Mm,
I've been writing screenplays for years, and then I started making short films on documentaries. And then I said to myself, well, might as well make one of these features that I'm writing. And so we went ahead with The Stress is Killing Me, which we shot almost a year and a half ago and then finished it about a year later with editing and everything. And then it got distributed. It came out about 2 weeks ago.
yeah, yeah. Ah, right. So, what was it about when you were looking at your scripts? What was it about this one that was like, yo, this is the one we're gonna make first?
Well, I noticed something amongst people that were in careers, and that was that they were growing frustrated, especially after they've been doing it for 15, 20, 25 years. They kind of said, we might have been sold a bill of goods here. We came out of school or college, we worked incredibly hard, we got our career going. We worked, 80, 90 hours a week. And now I'm in 20 years and I go, what did it all mean?
Mm,
And so The Stress is Killing Me is about 8 people who come back for their college reunion after 20 years. And they're all, successful doctors, lawyers, etc. But they are all frustrated with their jobs. And so what we did was we said, well, what's your dream job? What do you really want to do? Everybody's got a dream job. And then they decide when they get together that they're all going to switch to their dream jobs. And they're going to see, one wants to be a teacher, one wants to be an artist, one wants to be a sex therapist, everybody's got a job that they really love. One wants to be a detective. And they switch to them. But that's where the fun starts because it's not what they thought it was going to be. Jobs are hard and they're not always
mm,
fun. And it's hilarious because what they go through is kind of a remarkable transformation. They think the grass is greener on the other side, but the grass is on fire. And then they see that the work they've done for 20 years has actually been really good and really valuable. And
mm.
it's a wonderful life moment where they go, I've actually done some good work here after they go through what they go through trying their dream jobs and everything goes wrong and it's not what they think. And then they come back to their lives and they go, this is not bad.
It's funny because giving yourself a week to try a new job is kind of preposterous, right? It's not enough time, but it is kind of like, you know, going from school to uni, right? When you think about it, because it's just like, I feel if you really break it down, we probably go to university and college too early because there's a load of people that have no clue of what they actually want to do, which is why then after a while you're like, I don't know if this is the job I want, right? Because you had no clue really what to do. Maybe a friend is doing a course and you're like, I might as well try that out, right? So now you're on a path which you never really wanted to go on, but you're in it. So it's just like, fuck, I might as well. This is all I can do now, right? I've got this qualification. Now I've got to get a job in this field because I've spent all this money.
Right.
And you know what I mean? And I that is kind of like trying a job for a week, you know what I mean? Because you're not set up really for it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I talk to people who are in sort of highly successful careers, architects, doctors, lawyers, a lot of them complain and they say, this is not what I thought it was going to be. A doctor might say, all I deal with is paperwork or, administration. I can't, be the doctor. The lawyer says, I get deadbeats off. I thought I was going to change the world or whatever. But they're missing the fact that when you spend 20 years, as you say, you get out of school and you do something, you've gotten really good at it. And maybe the value of it is kind of hidden, but it's there. It's there. And maybe you just need to see that the work that you've done all those years is actually very valuable and it supported a family and friends and life and all that stuff. But you needed to get a little attitude adjustment about it. Some people actually go on and try a new career and that works out too. So we think people should try new things and see, how it comes down.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's that goalpost setting, right? It's what you are being told success looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Like people want something like Gray's Anatomy. And there's like, oh, so a successful doctor is pioneering new, surgeries and doing all of this stuff. And it's just like, it's not really that. Right. And the more skilled you are, and if you're going, right, I want to be head of department, I want to be this,
right, ambition.
Then you do stop doing more of like the surgeries. Now you're doing a lot more administration work. You're going to the meetings, so it changes it. So I think you have to think about, what do I actually want? Do I want the high role, or do I want to keep doing a lot of the work I actually really enjoy doing? Like, what is the thing that is driving me and giving me passion for this work? I think that's what we, some people have to assess. And I think it's one of those things that should be given to you at school. They should say, right, so this is the work. Now you see these jobs on TV. That's not it, right? That's not what this is going to be.
That's not.
Don't get it twisted. The actual job is like, I go for interviews and like manager, as I work in comms, right? So you go for a job, it's a manager's job, and they're like, there's going to be some admin. Are you okay with that? And it's just like, well, yeah, of course there's going to be some admin. Like, that, of course there's going to be admin, right? But they're just like, well, yeah, I hate to, but are you going to be okay writing out and typing? If you're just like, if you're not, don't do that job. You know what I mean? So I think it's this, as I say, it's goalposting, but I think it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz a lot of times with school and uni, where they don't want to pull back the curtain on a lot of things,
That's really well said. I mean, there's one character in here who's a doctor, and she is an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I don't know what you call them in the UK, but ear, nose, and throat.
Yeah.
Right? Allergies and stuff. And all day long, she stares into ear canals and up noses, and she goes, "Is this what it was all about for me?" And of course, there's the admin and everything. But what she comes to realize is that there's a lot of other things she can do in medicine. So she wants to be the artist, and she realizes she has no talent whatsoever to be an artist. She just has the dream of being an artist, and she can still create art, but she's not going to make a living at it. But then she comes back to her medical world and says, I think I'd like to work in the ER,
Yeah.
or something else that has more meaning to her. And that's kind of what this film is about. It's about people coming to understand what what really matters, and how to find satisfaction either in new work or the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, right? Because you would have kind of figured she would know there's the other departments. You could transition to one
Right.
of those, right? But
Right.
it's she hasn't the that penny hasn't even dropped for her. And I think that happens because you can become so immersed in your field, in what you're doing, that you don't really see, you know, what might be across the street, right? You just be like, well, this is it. This is the only thing. And then someone's like, oh, have you thought about, you're like,
And then there's money, right?
well, yeah.
People go to school, they take out loans, at least they do in this country, and then they have to pay those loans back, and they're an ENT and they're making good money, and they really want to go be Doctors Without Borders, but they have to, pay their loans and their mortgages and all that stuff. And
Mm.
that's part of the trap that people get into, and then they feel like they can't make a change even within their, an ENT can't be an orthopedic doctor, or but they can. And you said it, I think, very articulately. They just have to reach out and and value what they do.
Yeah, I think it's an odd situation, really, when it comes to education and everything like that, because, a student loan is one of those loans that just doesn't go away,
I
right?
know.
Other loans, if you become bankrupt or anything like that, loan's gone. Student loan is not.
Never gone.
Right. And because I remember when I went to university, because a thing about this film, that happened to me. Like, it wasn't 20 years. I went to college, came out, couldn't find any work, and I just stumbled into accounts. And I ended up doing accounts for nearly 4 years, sales ledger, purchase ledger,
Right.
credit control,
Right.
just doing all of this. But I'm just like, I'm sitting in front of the computer, crunching numbers, and I'm just, this ain't me. Like, I don't enjoy this. And then I figured, you know what? because I started doing kind of working in the music industry in the evenings, doing a lot of club promotion work, promoting artists, that kind of thing. And I was like, yo, I really enjoy this, because I did a module on marketing in college and I enjoyed that, but it didn't even click then. So doing this music stuff, I'm just like, you know what? Screw accounts. I want to do this. But I had to, so I was doing a lot of journalistic stuff, working as a news writer, entertainment writer. And I thought that might help me make a transition. It didn't. They wanted a degree, right? So I went back to uni and did a degree. I took a student loan. And I was I was literally just about to sign for the loan. And I'm talking to the woman and I'm just like, oh, yeah. So, man, so they start charging interest as soon as I get a job, right? And
Right.
they're like, no, the interest starts the minute this loan goes into your account. And I'm like, that makes no sense, though, because I'm not able to pay it back. So why would you start charging interest then? And it might take me a year or two to get an actual job. So the time I get that job, the money I owe has, like, grown substantially. That's insane. So I gave the money back. I was just like, you know what? I'll just work more hours to cover uni. But we get trapped.
Yeah.
So then it is a difficult thing, right? Like, I can't change my career, because if I change my career, I've got to start lower down,
Yeah.
right? So now I'm making entry level money. I've got a house, I've got a family, I can't support all of these things, pay that student loan on minimum wage. So you feel trapped a lot of times, which is one of those things I think a lot of people find themselves in.
You know, American writer said most men and women lead lives of silent desperation, which
Mm,
is, I think, a way of saying that, you know, in our movie we say the stress is killing me, but it's what you're saying is people do feel trapped and people do feel frustrated. Um, and maybe you have it right. It's like, yeah, maybe if you're a doctor, you should, and maybe you don't like being a doctor, but maybe you need to go work in the ER, right? Or
mm,
maybe you need to do something that makes you feel better and get out slightly out of your financial situation if you have loans or whatever. And doctors tend to have big loans and stuff, but
yeah.
still, you can search for a way to make it more meaningful. And I guess we're just exploring all that in this film because
Mm,
we're exploring whether you want to change jobs or whether you just want to find new meaning in the job that you have, or that. But what we know is, like, my wife is a teacher, for instance, and I always said I really want to be a teacher, you know, or a professor. And she said, "Well, you have no idea what the classroom is like." And I said, "Well, what's it like?" And she said, "You know, no one's listening. They're half of them are absent. Nobody does the homework. You're not going to like being a teacher." And that was
mm.
part of this beginning of going, you know what? Maybe the dream job needs to be evaluated because it's just a distraction from the stress that you're under. and
Yes.
and then if you evaluate, then you come back, you either change or you come back to your job and you say, I want to work in the ER or whatever is more valuable to you or more satisfying.
Mm, mm. That is definitely the thing, right? It's all about those distractions. Because when I was doing accounts, and I hated accounts, right? So I was just like, okay, what can I do to mitigate the daytime stuff? So in the evenings, I was doing kickboxing, jujitsu, and
Yeah,
going to a load of music gigs,
right.
right? And that's so I've got gigs to look forward to. Like, oh, I'm gonna go see Jay-Z in a week. Oh, awesome, right? Yeah, in 2 weeks' time, I'm seeing Foo Fighters, right? So I had these different things to look forward to, and then
Right.
4 times a week, I'm doing jujitsu. So it's just like, you're getting that stress out in
Yeah.
these different ways,
Yeah.
so sometimes it's finding those other things which can help you.
Yeah. I mean, you can find, whether it's a distraction or it's a pursuit. You love doing jujitsu, or I like to windsurf, and everybody's got something. And
Mm,
I'm just a big believer that everybody should, find those things. But work is, as you know, the central activity of our lives,
yes.
and our families, our friends, all of that, of course, comes with it. But we spend our lives making a living for most of us, except for the 1%. And I just wanted to sort of help people evaluate their work lives
Mm,
and what they're going through on a day-to-day basis and how to make sense of it.
yeah, like I think like the underlining point of the film is very relevant to the majority of people, right? I think every a low, and especially the reunion thing, right? It's like meeting up with people you haven't seen in a long time, and it's just like, oh, do I look as good as I did when I was 18? And it's just like, you were 18, so obviously you
There
don't
you
look the
go.
same, dummy,
Yeah.
right? It is, but you think about those things. You like, oh, is my job flashy enough? Right? You might even enjoy the job you're doing. Like you might be the manager, let's say the manager of a shoe shop, and you like that job, but
Right.
you're like, oh, but some of these people are doctors and lawyers, and that's my job isn't as fancy as theirs, right? So it's all of those things are things people have dealt with, and then it's the whole job situation of being frustrated with your actual job. So I think that like all of those things people can definitely look at and be like, I understand what Kiki, Will, Todd, like all of these people were going through.
Yeah, one of the characters is an advertising executive, and he thinks that he spent his life fooling people to buy dog food. He works on a dog food campaign, and he sort of hates himself because of it. But what he learns in the process of it is that he's part of something bigger, and he does go back to being an advertising exec. But now he goes back going, "Hey, I'm good at this, and dogs got to eat, and I can help this company survive." And
Mm,
suddenly it's not just fooling people, screwing with their heads, but it's part of a business. And when he sees that, it's almost like you talking about your music and how suddenly it made sense to him, and he was proud of what he had accomplished as opposed to feeling like a charlatan. Now he felt proud and sort of honorable by it because he had tried something else, and he had realized, that was fun, but I'm really good at this thing over here.
mm. Well, yeah, I think it's all storytelling, right? And it's about telling that story, but like telling people why this dog food is the one that your dog is going to enjoy the most.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean? Like, I think people think that, you know, comms is a lot of people lying, right? And some people do lie, but most of the time people are
Most
just
times, right.
telling an honest story, right? You're telling about the USP of your thing, right? Of your product,
Yeah,
your service, and that's what it
yeah.
is.
And in this case, he says, yeah, somebody says, well, dogs got to eat, and he says, yeah, but not this dog food. So if you follow your thought, maybe he should go work for a different dog food company, right?
Exactly.
And the one that he believes in because it's natural or it's, organic or whatever.
Mm,
And then he'll feel good about using the skills that he has for the betterment of the company and his life, and he'll feel better about it. So
yeah,
that's also kind of a revelation for some of these characters, is that they can do what they do, but they need to find a different sort of aspect of what they do. Work in the
yeah,
ER instead of instead of doing allergies all day. Not that I
exactly.
don't like doctors who do allergies, believe me. I like that.
Oh, well, ear, throat, and note, right? Like Donna's just a bit like, oh, all I do is look in ears and stuff. I'm like, yo, there's a point I lost my voice. I lost my voice for like 3 months.
Right.
Like it was painful, it was just crazy. So I was going to the ENT all the time for different tests, and I love those people, right? Because they got my voice back. So
This is exactly what the point is that you needed an ENT because without your voice, one, you have trouble just functioning, but two, what you do is
mm,
about your voice. And these ENTs that you went to presumably helped you sort of get your voice back. What could be more important than that?
exactly. So
Right?
I think sometimes it's just not feeling valued in the job,
Right.
right? So
That's
it's
true. Right.
having your boss be like, yo, great day today, man. Or just, the people you like your work, you're doing a service for, being like, thank you. That really helped me. It's just
That's right.
validation sometimes,
Yeah.
and if you're not hearing it, you don't really it's sometimes it's easy to forget why you're doing the thing.
Well, that's a really good point because I know so many people who don't feel valued by their employer, by their company, because I think the company thinks that if you say nice things, they'll stop working or something,
Mm,
right? We don't, I've never done that, and I'm sure you've never done that, but you can't believe how many people out there say, I do everything I can for this company, but I don't get recognition. I don't get acknowledged for it. Maybe because when you acknowledge, they want a raise. I don't know, but they should get a raise probably.
yeah.
So it's So it is true. That's part of the frustration. That's part of the stress is killing me. Is that instead of feeling great about your job every day, you feel like your employer doesn't value what you do to the full extent.
And then you branch that out into, the dynamic of a relationship, right? With Todd and Sue. And it's a similar thing, communication, right? They didn't really so you have that issue. It's just like, oh, well, that's just something people say. And it's just like,
Right.
you think you're saying it like that. She's thinking that's what you actually want.
Right.
But you haven't sat down and talked about it. So now we're in this situation.
Yeah. Well, relationships are tricky, right? And it is true. Most people go to their reunions and they go home and they go, well, that was fun. But when we put these people together, old flames kind of come up, old loves, old flames. And people, even married people, too. There's a couple there that's married, but something about the chemistry of the place starts to bring out some of the problems that they have in their relationship that they didn't really acknowledge to each other. And that's sort of what happens when people go to reunions. They evaluate everything. There's something about that 20-year, 25-year reunion where they look at their whole lives. And this is a comedy, and we're trying to just, make people laugh and have fun and be entertained. But it's got a serious sense to it because, yeah, you're thinking about your career. You're also thinking about your marriage or your love life or your friends and how it all kind of fits together.
Yeah. And I think we do that thing, right? Where people love to reminisce. They love to reminisce and be like, oh, remember when I was dating
Right.
Claire? Oh, that was so good. But they never recalled the crazy arguments they had with Claire. The amount of times they broke up and got back together, right? It's just always like, oh, Claire was great. Because you only look back at like the curated moments that float around in your head, right? You're not keeping all the negative stuff. You only that, those really lovely things. So you can be like, oh, I wish my current relationship was like that. Where you're just like, in all honesty, that was a hot mess.
I have a very good friend of mine who's a psychologist, and he says that people, when they look back on a career they could have had or a relationship, they always think about the positive element, how great it would have been to be, Elon Musk or a famous entrepreneur or a famous doctor or whatever. And he says they never think about the person who flunked out of medical school or the person who ended up looking into ear canals all day. They always look at the most positive approach to their fantasies is what they are. And we're having fun with that. I mean, that's because everybody has a dream job, but the dream job might not be so great. But it might be too. It might be that you follow one of the characters, one of the funny moments in the film, we think, is when they're going around the table and they're all talking about what they really want to do. And the guy who's an IT guy, the computer guy, he won't tell them. He was the biggest partier in college 20 years ago. He was the guy who, wild man. Anyway, finally acknowledges that what he really wants to do is be a priest. And they all crack up because they know this guy only is the hard drinking guy who, howled at the moon. And now he wants to be a priest? Like, how did that happen? Well, in 20 years, a lot happens to people in 20 years, right? And for him, it was a spirituality that sort of emerged from the stress. And of all the characters, he actually goes on to be a priest or a minister or something. That he wants to be a minister so he can get married. But he goes on to actually embrace that whereas most of the other characters go back. And so you might have a calling in life. It might
Yeah.
not be what you're doing now, and that's great. You should follow that and make it happen, and a lot of people do. But that 20-year interval where he went from being the hard partying guy to being the guy who was spiritual, read the Bible every day, wanted to be a priest, says it all, doesn't it? About how people can change, during that period.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's funny. Like, it reminds me of like Steve-O, right, from Jackass, who was crazy, drinking, drugs, doing all of these insane stunts and things.
Yeah.
Cleans up his life, stops drinking, stops doing drugs, and starts stand-up comedy. You know what I mean? And it's just like, when you think about where he was, like, he's even said himself, he didn't even think he'd be alive at this point, right?
Yeah.
But he's cleaned everything up. He still does some crazy stunts and things like that, but he's pretty much shifted that career from movies to comedy, and by all accounts, he's doing all right at it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people do go through that kind of transformation. I was trying to remember, I was listening to a rock star. I can't remember who it was, someone from Led Zeppelin or from somewhere. And he was saying just that story, that you couldn't go on stage unless he drank a lot of vodka every night and the whole, and drugs and everything. And then he decided, because he was going to die, he decided to clean his act up. And he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to perform as well. He wouldn't be able to write music as well. I remember now, it was somebody with the Eagles. And then he said what happened was he wrote better music and he performed better because he was sober, right? And because people think they need some kind of inebriant or something to go out and be creative, when in fact the opposite is true. And it kind of parallels our film, because people sort of sober up and they realize that they can do what they do better than they're doing it.
Yes.
Just like the guy from the Eagles.
Yeah. So there was someone else. I think it's Maynard something. And like I've heard him talk about stuff, and I think now he's got like a load of vineyards, right? He sells wine. I think he sells some other stuff as well, and he still does music, right? He's in a big kind of like I think rock band, like I can't think of who, but yeah, he's like an iconic band. But he thought, if I change, then, as I said, like, the music's gonna suffer. But he didn't, and he's successful in all of these other things as well. I think he owns restaurants too, so he's just got all these other new ventures.
It's a good point. So at the beginning of the movie, one of the doctor, the ENT, she says, I really want to be an artist. And somebody says to her, well, do you paint? And she says, no, I don't have time for it. And I go, that says it all. Okay, in 20 years, you couldn't figure out, an hour to pull out a canvas. And what we're saying is pull out that canvas, right? It doesn't matter. And then you can do it while you're being a doctor, an ENT. And you're helping people like you save their voices to go on to very productive lives. Go paint it, paint it at 9 o'clock at night. If you love doing it, do it. And do it, and don't feel like you have to be a professional or make a living at it. Just do it. Do it and have fun doing it. Makes a huge difference. So I never thought about my own film this way, but it's true. It's what we're saying is, find things you love to do and do them while you're doing your career.
Yeah. because it's, you know, it's that stress relief,
Yeah,
right? It's
right.
that it's that little capsule pleasure that you're getting. And as I said, it can mitigate the monotony of the job that you might find a bit draining at times, you know?
Yeah.
But art is always one of those weird ones for me. Because, you know, at school you do art and
Right.
someone goes around and tells you that's not very good.
Right.
But then when you're an adult, like you go to art galleries and you see art that's not conventional, and
Right.
you're just like, I drew something like that, and I was told that I could never be an artist.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those subjects. It's like, you know, the point when she puts the pictures online and she's like, people are telling me I'm rubbish. And it's just like, who gives a damn? Right? If it's something you enjoy doing, don't, you know what I mean? Don't let people confine your enjoyment of the thing.
Yeah, maybe what you're saying is that if you do it without worrying what people think about it, you're going to get a lot more out of it.
Mm,
This woman could have been an artist for the last 20 years and kicked out hundreds of paintings and enjoyed it and loved it and not worried. But when in this film, when they decide to become their dream job, all the pressure of the dream job suddenly is on them with a different job. And it's
yes.
like, oh, now I have to be so good as an artist that people will buy my paintings, right? And that creates a whole, the stress of being an artist where, you paint, nobody buys it, the gallery sends it back. And it's like, people, that's what my friend, the psychologist, said. Everybody always thinks that it, in the sense of it's an ultimate success, but most people, the stress is killing them.
Mm,
The title of this movie was a working title, but every time we told people what the title was, they'd say, "What's the title?" And we'd say, "The stress is killing me." And they go, "Yes, that's my life." And so we said, "Well, we got to keep the title because it works." But my point, and I think your point, is that if you can do what you love to do, even if you keep your job, or you can transfer to another job if you can make a living at it, but do what you love to do.
mm. Yeah. That I think that's it, right? And I think that's the takeaway, you know, that I think a lot of people will get once they finish the film, right? That, you know, maybe it's fine to look at new careers, but really just find something that you love to do. Find something you're actually passionate about and look at that, right? Whether it's a hobby, whether it's a new job, you know, because as I said, like sometimes you might have so many commitments, it's not really a feasible thing to change the career.
Right.
But
Or you
you,
can't make a living doing, whatever
mm,
that is, being a tap dancer, but you can
yeah,
still tap dance.
exactly. That's the thing. You can still do tap class a couple of times a week. You could take up rock climbing. You could, you know, go windsurfing with you, right?
Right.
There's other things that you can do
Right.
that are enjoyable.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I mean, the point is that we're all on this planet for a small amount of time, relatively, and we want to feel like our lives have meaning and our
Mm,
work has meaning. That we're not just sort of floating in space, but we're doing something that matters, that helps other people, affects other people, or whatever. However, you define that. And so what we're exploring is how to figure out how to do what you love, and also how to recognize, like your doctor, your ENT who helped you with your voice, how important that is for other people. And if that's what you want to do, help other people, you're doing it, right? And one of the characters that you might relate to is a guy who is a CPA, an accountant, right?
mm,
And he doesn't like being an accountant either. because it's all numbers, right? He wants to get into a more tactile world where he can feel things and be right. But all he does is spreadsheets and, income taxes and all that stuff. And he's just, he's been doing it for 20 years and he just doesn't like it anymore. Right. And he's the one, he wants to be a movie director. And so he tries to make a movie and it all goes bad because suddenly actors are walking out on him and people are not doing what he told them to do, and he can't get the shots that he wants. He realized, like all the rest of us, it's maybe not so great. But then he learns how to make his film into something that helps his relationship with his wife. So making a film, I think this is exactly what you were saying. He's making a film that helps him with his life, and he likes doing it, but he doesn't have to be, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah. It's looking at the parameters, right? Going, I want to be a filmmaker. I've got no experience doing it.
Right.
I want to make a big ass movie. Right. When it could be like, well, let me play around. Let me look at this software and make some little things and build that way. Right. And by building the smaller thing, he got enjoyment from that. Yeah. Right. And brought happiness to someone else, right? So it's just like his thing might just be making small videos for people. You know what I mean? Like, like we all want like clips and different things. So he might be like, he could take this episode and break it down and make little snippets and he enjoys that, right? Rather than trying to be Martin Scorsese. Right. It's just understanding where our talents lie. And I think that's what he finds.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, I get these clips that I see online on the social media and I go, they're little films almost, they're little stories or little things that happen and I go, who's making these? Like, who's taking the time to and that's what you're talking about. This guy could make these things and post them and, and they'd be on X and they'd be on Facebook and be on wherever, on YouTube. He could have a YouTube channel and do that. Because ask anybody in the film business, making a living in the film business is really hard, right? Maybe you'll have more fun making YouTube shorts.
Yeah. And there's a skill to it, right? There's a real skill of finding the nuggets in a conversation, in an interaction that will make people smile or be interesting to people to consume, right? My friend Daniel Glenn Barber does it very well when he does that. Like Cody Merrow, he does it really well for the Anik and Florian podcast. There's people that really know how to do it, right? So I think if that's what you can do, then you could do very well in that field.
Yeah.
Got it. When you you thought about this film and the kind of concept you talked about, like you knew friends that had this thought. Like, what about you in your careers? Like, had you thought about making a change at all?
Well, I come from the communications world, advertising, public relations, and I've just been working in video. So in a sense, I'm not really switching into the, I'm continuing as you told, I'm making documentaries and short films, and then I said, well, let's make a feature, and we're, an independent film. We got our funding. And we had a great time doing it. So to me, it's an extension. It wasn't like, oh, I have a dream job, I'm gonna change to my dream job. It was more like I'm already doing my dream job, but now I want to, as you said, work in the ER instead of looking at the ear canals. I'm just switching to something that's bigger and more, and frankly, more fun. Being a director is the best job in the world, and it's incredibly challenging.
Mm.
In this film, we have a scene where a guy wants to be a director and everything goes wrong. And his people walk off the set saying, I can't work under these conditions and everything like that. I'm making fun of myself in that situation, because now that's never happened to me. I've always had great people to work with, and we've always had a great deal of fun. So I love what I do. But I also, I've done advertising for years and public relations. I love doing that too.
Yeah. It's all, as I said before, it's all storytelling, right? So you've just found a new outlet to tell stories,
Yeah.
right? Which is great.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm. But it's definitely different from doing, like, I've had to, do video shoots at work, and sometimes you're working with people that just should not be doing this shit. It could just be infuriating. Like, I remember doing one, and there's this girl, and she kept on being like, "Oh, you should get them to tell like what their favorite music is," and it's just like I was doing this video for a hospital, and it's just like, wait, what has that got to do with this? What are you doing? Like, stop. Just stop. Like, you're ruining this day. We've got so many hours, right? We're in this room where is conscious of the light, and you keep on butting in with some stupid ideas. Just what's happening here? And it's dealing with things like that sometimes.
Well, I always say, when you have a crew of 40, 50, 100 people, you're going to get all kinds of people working on your movie. And I've always been really lucky and had incredibly talented, incredibly dedicated people who, and I don't know why, because I go, well, we work so hard, but they tend to like it, which is good. They tend to say, "Hey, let's make another one," and I go, "Great, I'd love to as well." So I've been lucky. I've been lucky but I know what you're talking about.
When you were, planning all of this out, what did you think the biggest challenge would be? And
Casting,
what once you got to the end, what actually was the biggest challenge?
casting.
Ah,
Casting, and I'm not the one who says this. The Martin Scorsese's and the Francis Ford Coppolas, and everybody says the same thing. In your country, John Madden and others who are incredible directors. It's like casting is 80% of it. One of my favorite movies is Shakespeare in Love.
Great film. Great film.
Incredibly well written. Can you imagine anyone else but those people? Joseph Fiennes, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeffrey Rush, all of them. You just can't. And I'm sure once you do it, you still have to do your job. But once you get really talented actors, anyway, in this case, we started during COVID. And so we did audition almost 1,000 people, believe it or not.
Right.
But most of it was on Zoom or whatever. And we had to find the right people. We're not a big budget movie, so we couldn't get Leonardo DiCaprio. We had to find the best actors you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And I think we did. And we went and found 8 just fantastic young actors, youngish actors. But that was the biggest challenge, to find truly talented people that could pull this story off. And that's what that's why you go. And it's so funny because there were sometimes when you're working and you know the type you want, and you're looking at film. And I remember once with the woman who played the doctor, I saw her on a series called Longmire, which is it's actually shot here in the West, and she had one line, and I said, "Who's that?" And we found her agent, we read her, we auditioned her, and we cast her. And one line. She had one line. but there was something about her that I
Mm, mm.
loved, and she turned out to be great. Everybody turned out to be great. So that was the biggest challenge, but it was very exciting. It was just very time consuming to, during COVID. You couldn't get people to come in for auditions during COVID. You had to do it on Zoom, and then ultimately we would all meet and audition in person when we got down to the last 15 or 20 people.
Yeah, yeah. But I think what you just said there, right? Because I think a lot of times you'll talk to people, and when it comes to casting, like people can have some kind of delusional thoughts, right? It's just like, I just want to get my script in the hands of Tom Cruise because I know if he reads it, he's really gonna want to make my film, right? And it's just like, I mean, Tom Cruise is a great actor, no doubt, but there's a load of other talented actors that we don't know yet, right? And people look over them because they want someone with a name, right? They're like, oh, I want that person that's been in that series or done this film or this. When it's just like, there's all of these other people, like all those famous actors were unknown at one point. And if no one gave them that opportunity, we wouldn't have a Samuel L. Jackson, a Denzel Washington. You know, we wouldn't have an Angela Bassett. We wouldn't have these people. So it's just like, you know what I mean? Like being open to giving people an opportunity, right? Being able to look and see the potential in someone off of one line.
Yes.
That's commendable. There's a lot to that.
You know what I learned about all these actors, but especially our actors, is they're looking for an opportunity. That's their number one goal, because they have something to offer, and they have to have an opportunity to show it. And I say, from working in this industry for a while, everybody is looking for an opportunity. Not everybody can be Tom Cruise and do everything they want. That's 1/10 of 1%. Most people have a script, or they're an art director, or they're a sound, person, and they want to show the world what they can do. And the great thing about working in film, especially when we're making this film, is we said to everybody on cast and crew, that's 100 people, show us what you can do personally. Show us what you've been saving up, and they did. Our art directors did miracles. Our actors did a terrific job. Our hair and makeup people, they said, we've been waiting for an opportunity to do this kind of thing. And then they all performed, and to watch it is like watching a miracle take place. That's a film. That's what a film is, frankly. It's kind of a miracle coming to life.
Yeah. But I also think you need the conductor. You need the right, because there's a load of people, like there's people I talk to on the reg, right? And they'll be like, oh, I really want to be an actor. Oh, I really want to get into music. I really want to. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm like, so have you got a website showing, what? Oh, no, I don't have that. Oh, okay. Or is that, so are you on LinkedIn? Like, are you connecting with companies that way? Like, oh no, I don't have that. And it's just like, well, you're here talking about what you want and just wanting an opportunity, but you haven't even done the basic things to get you ready for that opportunity, right? If someone comes to you and says, oh man, like, I really like your look, I really like your what you've got to say, send me a link to your website so I can show that to my boss and show him your reels and all. Oh, I mean, I don't have well, you've lost that opportunity. right? So you don't have that. So it's just like it's about being ready. And it sounds like all those people that you found were ready, right? So when you were like, show me what you can do,
Yes,
they can just hit the ground and be like, boom, let's go.
that's absolutely right. Is that these actors, and they're all in their 40s because it's their 20th reunion. Some are a
Mm,
little younger, some are a little older, but they're all, they've been practicing their craft, and they've had, they've all been in movies and TV shows and stuff. They're just not yet well known. But that's exactly what happened. We said to them, "Are you ready?" And they said yes. And because, when you're doing an independent film, you don't have 3 weeks for a rehearsal.
mm,
You don't have a lot of shooting days. You just can't afford it. And so I said to the cast, I said, look, come know your lines, come
yes.
bring a natural style, don't try to put anything on, but bring your character with you. And you can't believe what people can do on short notice when you have talented people. It's
Mm,
astounding what they can do and what they bring to it. Film is, it's true on all films, whether it's a big budget or not, whether it's, Mission Impossible or Shakespeare in Love. You get to the set, you might have a little rehearsal, but not much, and you're expected to perform remarkably with, and that's why the actors that and love make the big bucks, because they can show up with their lines and pull off what 99.99999% of the people can't.
mm,
You want to watch it, right?
yeah.
In our case, these actors brought their A game and performed, I think, beautifully, and brought their, as you said, their energy, their excitement, and they were ready to play. And that, when we went through 1,000 people to find these 8, and I think we found people who are ready to play.
Mm, mm. Did you do like set anything up to help them build that chemistry? Like, did you use music? Were there like film references? Be like, oh, I think Will is like the character in this film or this book, or was there anything like that? Or did you just literally be like, yo, I believe in you, do your thing?
It's more the latter, but what we did, one is that because it was an ensemble, the actors came every day, all day, every day that we shot.
Right, right.
And so they sort of were like a family by the end of it. Not by the end, actually, by about the second day. They felt like they had all gone to college together. And
I mean, they
as in,
did in the film,
in
right?
the film they did. And at the end, there's a scene where they're saying goodbye, which we didn't film until the last day. And they were crying. And after I said cut, I said, "Are you really crying?" And they're all like, I said, "There's no crying in movies. You're not allowed." It's like, but they all loved each other, and they all went. So that created the chemistry you were talking
Mm,
about. In terms of the style of acting, I said, look, if it's not funny, it's not funny. We hope it's funny. So you don't have to put on anything,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to try too hard. Everybody, sometimes when a film's not too good, the natural style goes out the window, right? Because they feel like they have to put on something that's not quite there to make it a little funnier, make it a little more
Mm,
entertaining. I said, no, look, we think it's funny. We hope it's funny. I want a natural style. That changes. Actors love that because they go, you mean I can just inhabit the character? I don't have to put anything on? No, I don't want you to mug. I want you to just become the character in a natural style. So between them becoming like a family and enjoying the natural style, it all for them worked, I think, very well.
ah, nice. No, that's good to hear, man. It is funny, as you said, like when you think about iconic roles, and it's hard to think about who else could do that job.
Right.
But then when you hear sometimes who nearly got those roles, right? It's like
Right.
oh, is Eric Schultz? Is it Eric Schultz? I get the Schultz mixed up sometimes, but I think it's Eric Schultz is meant to be Marty McFly in Back to the Future.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah. Yes, I know the story, and he actually filmed for a couple of weeks,
yes.
and then they asked Michael J. Fox to take over, and they
We-
went back, filmed it all over again.
Yeah, and when you think about the film Schultz did, like he's a great actor,
Yeah.
but that
True.
would have been a different Marty McFly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Is it like one of the craziest ones I remember hearing, because oh my days, like I love Lord of the Rings. Like as a kid, like I was in like junior school, yeah, no, infant school, right? And a play group, a theater group came and did this, version of The Hobbit, and it blew me away. I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is so great. And I got The Hobbit from the library, and I read The Hobbit so many times. And then someone was just like, did you know he wrote other books? I'm like, wait, what? There's more? So then I read Lord of the Rings, and I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. So when I heard they're making the film, I was just like, please don't mess it up. Please don't mess it up. Please don't mess it up. And then when they talked about the cast, and they're like, Robert Townsend was going to be arrogant.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know about that. But then you hear, like, they're going into production. Day 2, it's just like, oh, they've changed the car. Now they brought in Viggo Mortensen to play arrogant. And at the time, I was like, who's Viggo Mortensen? You watch Lord of the Rings, and you just like, who else could have played arrogant? You know what I mean? Like Robert Townsend, that's a different arrogant if he's in that film. Viggo Mortensen just put his imprint on that. And it's those kind of things that are just like, yo, that film would have been so different. Back to the Future would have been so different, right? As you say, casting is so important.
I'm a huge Hugh Grant fan, and I think of him in Bridget Jones or 2 Weeks Notice or any of his films, and I go, I don't think anybody else could have pulled off that role that way. It's remarkable, and you're right though. You got to find the right person, especially in like Lord of the Rings, where you're a huge fan, and your first reaction is, I love this. Please don't screw it up. Can you imagine the director who's trying to cast some of the roles in Lord of the Rings and going, oh my God, if I cast this person, people like Kevin are going to be upset because they don't see him or her that way, right? I mean, it's a stress. Talk about the stress is killing me.
Oh man,
I think Peter Jackson did a pretty good job there.
Oh, he did a remarkable. Like, it's a funny thing, right? Because when I saw Rivendell, when I saw Nuremberg, when I saw Moria, just all of these places, I'm just like, wait, what just happened? How did he get in my head? That's exactly how I envisioned it. And you speak to like the amount of people I spoke to, and they're like, that's exactly what I thought it was gonna be. Right. So he was able to capture it in a way that it worked for, I'd say 99% of the audience. The casting, like like Gimli's on point. You know what I mean? Just I can't think, all the names have gone out of my head, but everyone was on point, right? There was no character in that film. And you're just like, I mean, if only they could have got this person to be that. Like everyone, it was just so good. Like when you think of things like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, like Gary Oldman, oh my days.
Yeah,
He was so good.
so good. You know, they wanted someone besides Humphrey Bogart for Casablanca. Can you imagine Casablanca without Humphrey Bogart? And I think it was Hal Wallace, the producer, said, no, this is going to Humphrey. They would have changed. They would have, I think they wanted Ronald Reagan to play it or something. And Reagan was a good actor, actually. But you just, but what I was thinking about while you were talking is that when you make a film, you're trying to satisfy what you described in your love for Lord of the Rings. You wanted to have an immersive experience where the world that you imagine can be played out in a satisfying way. And when all of us set out to make a movie, what we're trying to do is tell a story that will so engage people that they will learn something and laugh and have fun and enjoy it and come out a different person.
Yes.
And in your case, you came out of Lord of the Rings a different person because someone had managed, at least at 99%, to create a world that you love and you want to be part of. And suddenly you were, because you're in that theater enjoying it. Right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And to be honest with you, Tom, right? A lot of the time, I'm having that experience more with indie films than big budget films, right? I remember watching this film called Clairvoyant. Oh my days, it was so fun, right? It was Michaela Whitman and Arthur Delaroche. They put this film together. They like yourself. It was during the pandemic, and they filmed this film, and it was this kind of like pseudo documentary parody kind of thing, like kind of in the vein of The Office, like the English version, you know. I like the US version of The Office, but it was more sitcom than pseudo documentary, you know what I mean? But this film, Clairvoyant, it was so good. They did such a good job of it that just pulled you in to this character, you know. And yeah, I'm finding more that this is done in the indie world.
Well, everyone who's watching knows that what has happened, at least in the States, in Hollywood and wherever else we make movies here, is that the studios have moved to major budget films. The Avengers kind of thing, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million dollar kind of films. And while some of them are great, some of them are great, but it sucks the air out of the world for the $20 million, the $30 million movies that we used to make and love. They don't have the money for them anymore. And so they used to make, each studio would make 15 or 20 of these kind of wonderful movies, and they're not making them anymore. So we're trying to make independent films. And we're going on Amazon, and we're going on Netflix, and we're going on Apple TV, where we find a receptive audience for these, because the big studios, they're not making them anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think a shift might be happening, right? Because Searchlight put out a Real Pain that did very well. Like Apple had oh gosh, what is it? There's Fingerprints, I think it was.
And in Nora, the one that won Best Picture, of course, was made for $6 million as an independent film.
Yeah. So I think people were seeing that there is value in this, and also so many of these large budget films have flopped in the box office, which sometimes, right? Sometimes you'll watch a film like Madam Web and you're like, oh my god, what the fuck did they do here? Sometimes though, I see these films that people are like, oh, it's terrible, and I'm like, it's actually pretty decent. But when you look at the marketing campaign for that film,
That's right.
it's just like, I don't know what they're trying to say here. Right. And so they muddle the message. So people go in with a certain expectation.
Yeah.
And it's not met because, you sold them a weird bill of goods.
And also, when you're making call it $300 million movie, you're not going to take a lot of chances.
No.
You're going to go to Mission Impossible, Avengers, Marvel. You're gonna go somewhere, maybe Sherlock Holmes, but you're not gonna take a chance at $300 million, because part of it is you then have to add the marketing budgets. And that marketing budget could be $50 or $100 million on top of that. And so you're going to play it safe. You're not, most of the time.
I mean, that is, I don't understand why the marketing budget is so high. It doesn't necessarily make any sense to me. But I also feel we have to change the parameters of success, right? Because for years, I used to think, because the narrative always was that first Incredible Hulk's film was a box office flop. When I actually looked into it, it was not a flop, right? It made double the budget, but it didn't make Spider-Man or X-Men money.
Right.
So and I think the fault was, Spider-Man, gangbusters, X-Men, crazy. Right. If we put out another one, we'll make the same. But they didn't make the same. So obviously it's a flop now. When it's just like, but you doubled the budget. That means it's not a flop, right? But their view of success was it's got to make quadruple the budget.
They're like hedge funds, they're like equity managers. They're saying, okay, we're going to put $300 million into this film and we hope to make $1 billion. And I'm I'm a businessman, and I like the business of films and I admire it. When they went to the huge budgets with the huge marketing budgets to try to make $1 billion, it changed the movie business. And now the independent films have to try to raise the money and make the film and get it distributed without the studios. And that's hard, but that's the new reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when people put out, oh man, I don't know how many times people have said this to you in comms, man, but when they're just like, yo, can you make us something that will go viral?
Yeah, right.
And it's just like, wait, we don't control that. Yeah. Right? Going viral is something because it captures something, right? It taps into a trend, a moment, a something. Like you can't manufacture that unless you're using bots or something like that. But you can't go, yes, I've made you this thing and it's gonna go viral. You can't say that shit. Like it's so silly,
Yeah. Well, the old, and unfortunately I have to leave in about 2 minutes, but what they're really saying for films is word of mouth, right? Because the old word of mouth is somebody would go to the film, they would buy tickets, they'd go to a theater. It wasn't that long ago, right? And then you'd come out and you'd call your friends and say, hey, I saw this movie. It's a wonderful movie. And then they would go and they would tell their friends. So what they're trying to duplicate now is that in the viral universe, right? And say, and it can happen.
Yes.
People, if they like something, they're in charge now. The studios are no longer in charge. The audience is in charge of what they like and what they don't like. For an independent film, you have to say, look, it's not Marvel, but it's a film that might affect your life, and you might think it's laugh out loud funny, and you might enjoy it, and you might learn something about your life and your career and have one of those experiences like you described. And you know, that's what The Stress Is Killing Me is all about. It's a film for people who are struggling with these things, but also want to, you know, a laugh. Anyway, so I'm sorry I can't stay longer. It's been absolutely fabulous, Kevin.
No
I
worries.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Run.
How can people follow you, Tom? And the
best
movie?
way to go is thestressiskillingme.com. And there you can watch the trailer. And you can, there's links to Amazon. And we're not out in the UK yet, but that should happen soon. In the States and in North America, that's where we are, and we're going to be around the world. So, so that thestressiskillingme.com. And you've been great. It's been a great conversation.
Oh man, it's been a joy having you here, Tom. Thank you so much. People, all the links are on the website, so make sure you go there, click through, and enjoy Tom's new film, his feature debut even. The Stress Is Killing Me. Tom Cullen, you've been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
All right, man. Stop by with your next film, okay?
All right. Thank you, Kevin. You've been terrific.